But my philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
Strength and solidarity. The strength and solidarity. Divided is our nation, combating and fighting hatred. The mission, should you choose to accept it, is fighting racist. Psychology is just a space where we run in our simulations. We load you up with the tools, then we plug you into the matrix. So have a seat on the couch, now tell me your situation. Take a look in the mirror, be honest, just who you facing. Marginalized as a youth, what challenges were you faced with? Feeling you wasn't equal, told that you wouldn't make it. Your ID isn't real, got you constantly trying to fake it. Hiding behind masks in the closet till you can't take it. Getting harder to breathe, someone choking you on the pavement. Unspeakable violence attacking you cause you Asian. Accomplices, we accomplish through collaboration. Engaging, educating, evaluating one another. Liberating the future of all our sisters and brothers. Empowering, elevating all communities of color. Strength and solidarity. The strength and solidarity.
The Strength and Solidarity podcast is a conversational piece that invites scholars, community activists, leaders, artists, and entrepreneurs to discuss their work as accomplices in cultivating cross-racial ethnic solidarity. Hosted and produced by Pooja Mamidana and Dr. Donna Deminari, our podcast team also includes our podcast interns, Alexis Rios and Petra Zadroga. The Strength and Solidarity podcast strives to engage, educate, evaluate, and empower communities of color, one episode at a time. Our guest today features the one and only Dr. Kevin Cokley, past president of Division 45. We're going to be wrapping up the podcast series, and this will be our last episode of the podcast, where we're going to be in conversation with Dr. Cokley talking about his presidential team, fighting racism with cross-racial ethnic solidarity toward being an accomplice. We thank you again for following us on this journey, and we really hope that you continue being active accomplices and getting in good, necessary trouble. Now let's get right into the episode. Hi, Dr. Kevin Cokley. Thank you so much for being here on our podcast today, Strength and Solidarity with Dr. Donna and I. This is our last episode of the podcast series, and we are so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And we're definitely excited to have you, and also as a thank you, for being our leader on this. And so as your term with Division 45, you're currently past president of Division 45. And as the task force, term comes to a close, what are some of the reflections and the impact that you aim to make during your tenure?
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to do was to make sure that people understood the importance and significance of cross-racial ethnic solidarity. I wanted it to be top of mind for people. I wanted it to be in the consciousness of Division 45 members. We as minoritized communities and people of color have complicated histories, but one of the things that we all have in common is dealing with white supremacy and racism. And I wanted to make sure that people understood that this binds this sort of common experience of dealing with white supremacy and racism. It binds us in a way that I think should be used and utilized to make us stronger to be able to more effectively fight and resist racism and white supremacy. And that's really what I hoped would be accomplished.
Do you think that we have accomplished that as a task force?
I would say if I had to give us a grade, and you didn't ask that, I would give us a B. And
Oh, that's not good.
well, let me explain why.
Okay.
And perhaps I'm too harsh of a grader, but so I went back and I looked at the newsletters that I wrote, or my messages that I wrote for the newsletters back when I first became president.
Mhm.
I remember sending messages to the listserv, sort of articulating what my presidential goals were. And then as I sort of reflected on my time as president, I wondered if people really remembered that this was my theme, and I wondered if it really was sort of top of mind. That I hope, for the task force, of course, we met regularly. I mean, we obviously worked on several important projects, including this podcast series. So it was always top of mind for us. But I did find myself wondering if it was top of mind for the members the way that I would have liked, and I'm not sure that it was. I could be wrong, but in my mind, it probably wasn't top of mind in the way that I would have liked. And I would attribute that in part to not being more consistent with the messaging, on my part. Sending, the initial message to the listserv, articulating the goals for the task force, I think was an important step, but not sort of consistently reinforcing that throughout my tenure. I think that was probably a lost opportunity. So that's why I would give us a B and not an A.
Oh, so just consistent with the messaging is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes.
So do you think that because I truly, personally, I believe that cross-racial ethnic solidarity is an important work that is especially important with what's happening in the world today.
I have that in my notes here. No, absolutely. I mean, and in fact, when I think about the message that I want to convey to the members of Division 45, it is that the work is not over. And when you look at what's going on with the war in Gaza and what is happening to Palestinian people, cross-racial and cross-ethnic solidarity is more important now than ever, particularly among minoritized people. And I want to sort of emphasize that. I realize that, I mean, when we talked about cross-racial and cross-ethnic solidarity, I don't know that I was as explicit as I could have been, that I was really particularly focused on minoritized people, because obviously, we need white folks as accomplices and allies. That's really important. But my focus on cross-racial and cross-ethnic solidarity was especially targeted towards minoritized communities. And I think given the war in Gaza and what's happening with Palestinian people, it is especially important that minoritized people sort of rise up in support of our Palestinian brothers and sisters, specifically, and really Arab and MENA folks more generally. And I think that's important. And so I would hope that people would see the value of this theme, particularly what's going on in the world today.
Yeah.
Can you?
Sorry, I you can ask, and I just want to add something. Go ahead, Donna.
You sure?
Yeah.
I was just really I kind of wanted to expand on that. Why emphasizing the importance of minoritized folks for this cross-racial ethnic solidarity? Why that?
Good question. Well, we know so folks who are not minoritized are certainly important in the fight against racism and white supremacy. I mean, they always have been and they always will be. But in my mind, there's a little bit of a difference just in terms of their sort of positionality and what they should do. So for example, like I don't think necessarily that they should be like leading that effort. Like they are an important component in some ways, but I think that there are some things that really are best left and done by minoritized people. And so and because of, as I sort of have laid out, our histories of fragile alliances, it's really important that we come together collectively to join this fight. So yeah, I think that focusing on minoritized communities in particular is really important. And there are some other political reasons why I think that's especially important given what's happening in Gaza now. Let me just be completely frank. Part of what has happened with the war in Gaza is that it has introduced or reintroduced some of the tensions surrounding, really what does it mean to be a minoritized individual community, and some of the tensions that involve individuals who identify as part of the Jewish community, and whether they are and should be considered to be minoritized people or not. And certainly, religiously speaking, they are a religious minority. I don't think anyone would dispute that. They are persecuted, typically because of religion, and so that that should be acknowledged. I think for me, when you think about what it means to be a racially and ethnically minoritized community, that's where I would disagree with people who would argue that Jews should be considered a racial and ethnic minority. Because if you look at, for example, and this has been sort of talked about quite a bit, a recent Pew's poll that indicated that between 80 and 90% of individuals who identify as Jewish identify as white. And so, given that, I don't see how one could make the claim that they should be considered a racially and ethnically minoritized group when the majority of them see themselves or identify themselves as white. And so that's not my opinion. That's data. And so what is happening now in APA in particular, and in other sort of places, is that you're having you're having these sort of battles, if you will, over sort of like, who should be considered to be in these sort of spaces of sort of being considered to be an ethnic or racial minoritized group. And unfortunately, it has started to become really contentious in that regard, and I think that's unfortunate, because again, as I said before, I think that Jewish individuals, the Jewish people, are absolutely a religious minority. They experience anti-Semitism, and that should be addressed. That is absolutely a problem. But I do not think that gives license to then not only be considered a racial and ethnic minority, but also then the additional tensions that introduces when you have folks who support Palestinian liberation and freedom. And so it becomes really, really complicated. And I don't want to turn this podcast into a discussion about that very complicated issue, other than to say that the theme of cross-racial and ethnic solidarity, for me, really must focus on minoritized people. And that means having a clear understanding of what it means to be racially and ethnically minoritized. Because if you don't have a clear understanding of that, then it only muddies the water after that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm kind of go a little behind from what we were talking about, but like when Dr. Donna asked you the first question about what have we achieved for this task force and the grade that you gave us. I also just want to add that it's not all on you though. Okay. Like we work in solidarity, and I feel like being part of the task force, we've also done our part in bringing this to like APA at the Division 45 conference, or like next year at the NMCS conference. So if all our listeners are listening, please come attend our 2 talks, because we're going to be talking about the work that we do even at that level, like at research conferences. So even with this podcast, Dr. Donna and I, when we started off, we did not think it would have such an impact as it has had today. And it's something that's going to continue to live on, right? And the work is never going to be done. So I guess my perspective is that we really brought that awareness and that consciousness into spaces that we are in, and we're going to continue to be in. So even though you might be done with your tenure and your presidency, like this is something you've also like ingrained in us, where we're continuing that work all throughout our lives.
Right. And also, even like with our task force, the process of coming together, I felt like, for me personally, I needed to navigate, like, what does it mean to co-chair, to lead? I don't want to, be that person who just delegates everything. My type of leadership is all about, let's come together, let's put all of our ideas together and see what we come up with, and making sure that all voices are heard, and validated. Like it's that kind of water ebb and flow. And I think our task force itself, went through that process of solidarity, getting to know each other and knowing each other's boundaries.
No, absolutely. I mean, when I think about what I envision for the task force, it's exactly sort of what we have. I wanted to assemble a task force, one, that was racially and ethnically diverse, to really serve as a model of what cross-racial and cross-ethnic collaboration and solidarity could look like. And as you said, Dr. Donna, we had to kind of go through, if you think about sort of the research on group formation, we had to kind of go through that process of kind of getting to know each other, comfortable with each other, and really sort of understanding each other. And that took some time, but what was really beautiful about it was just having different perspectives from people who coming from different lived experiences. That was so important. And there were times when we didn't always necessarily agree with each other, but we talked through it and we worked through it. And to me, that is what it's about. And so for me, I was very, very happy with the task force itself, just in terms of group processing. That's, to me, should serve as a model for other folks who would want to come together with these sort of very diverse coalitions, and what it could look like.
Yeah. So on that note, what do you consider to be the most significant accomplishments that was achieved during your tenure, particularly in the context of promoting cross-racial ethnic solidarity?
Well, so the first part of that question, I think I'm pretty clear. So as Division 45 president, organizationally, I think my most significant accomplishment was hiring David DeVito as the administrative manager. I mean, because he has been a godsend. So he is really, really wonderful. And so organizationally, I think that was my most significant accomplishment. Now, as it relates to the context of promoting cross-racial and ethnic solidarity, I think the relationships that have been formed out of this task force, I hope that they don't stop upon conclusion of me being, past president. I don't think that they will, I think that is really, really significant. And then, of course, the the products, the things that I really wanted to accomplish, um, having sort of having something that I could sort of point to and say, this is what we did. This is sort of what we accomplished. Clearly, this podcast was tremendous. I mean, and I can't even take credit for it. This was your idea, and so the two of you,
Puja.
well, your enthusiasm, your energy made this possible, and it really was, sort of an enduring part of my initiative. So for that, I want to thank thank both of you, and especially Pooja for the idea itself. So I'm very excited about that, and of course, I wanted us to come up. I think if you all remember from our early meetings, and I was thinking about other presidencies, and I was thinking specifically about Dr. Helen Neville and what she was able to accomplish with her radical healing initiative. I really wanted to. I'm a scholar. I'm a researcher, and so I really wanted to be able to publish some things, or to start the process of doing that, something that would like live in perpetuity. And I'm so happy that we have started that process, and sort of knock on wood, hopefully that that paper that we have that's under review in the American Psychologist, hopefully that will eventually get published, and to me that will be so significant, because that will be a permanent, sort of lasting aspect of the work that we did together as a task force. And what more influential place could it be published other than the American Psychologist,
Right.
an outlet that will be seen, that literally will be seen across the world, because the American Psychologist, is not just it's based in the United States, but it has such wide and broad circulation. And so that will be such a significant accomplishment. And I hope that it doesn't stop there, by the way. I mean, what I want is for there to be a continued effort to take aspects of what we have created in terms of a model, and to write about it. That to me will be a good example of the enduring influence of the work that we did together.
We're working on that.
Yeah, and you don't need to thank us. We also want to thank you.
Yes.
And you've kind of seen me grow through being part of your task force, and the things that I've engaged in, and very, very grateful for this opportunity you've given me and us. And yeah, thank
And for
you.
being a great mentor. Thank you so much for walking me through that text. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. That was a tricky situation.
Very tricky. But I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and Dr. Cokley, like Dr. Donna and I, like in so many spaces that we're in leadership, we're frequently bringing in the work that we do in the task force to those spaces, which is very much needed, because there is still much of that oppression Olympics that kind of goes on within leadership. And, it gets in the way of work really not being done and just kind of being stuck. So that's why earlier when I said it's not all on you. It's all of us too. It's all of us who you have engaged to be part of this task force, to also do our part to, continue that advocacy that we do. So I don't want you to say that you could have done better. No, it's all of us also.
Well, thank you, Pooja. I appreciate that. I hold myself to very high standards, and and I want to feel like I've done everything within my power to do the things that I set forth to do. And I also recognize that I can't do this work alone, and nor should I try to. And I'm so very grateful that I have people like the two of you, and the others on the task force who are also passionate about this, and who
Yes.
see this as something that does not just sort of stop here, but that has to continue, that needs to continue. And so this is not something, this is not my work alone. And in fact, I mean, the idea itself is not original. I mean, people have talked about cross-racial and ethnic solidarity for many years, well before I mentioned it. I certainly was influenced by that previous work, and I just wanted to be just a small cog in a larger sort of machine of working towards the goal of cross-racial and ethnic solidarity. But no, I appreciate you saying that, Pooja. I should not be so hard on myself.
Yeah, but we're all
Word.
children of immigrants, so there's that. I think that's our strength, and also sometimes we kind of need to be reminded of that.
And that whole imposter phenomenon that you're a scholar in that in that concept. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're kind of hard on ourselves too, is that we need to prove ourselves constantly that we belong in that space.
Yeah, but like so something Dr. Donna and I have really taken from Dr. Parham, like from APA conference, and then we recently had him on the podcast. I'll let you say your favorite quote, Dr. Donna.
Oh my gosh, why would you put me on the spot like that?
I mean, but it fits to what we're talking about.
Yeah, you don't need validation from your oppressor.
That is so true. I mean,
Yes.
and that's one of Dr. Parham's favorite quotes that he got from his mentor, Dr. Joseph
Yep.
White. It is so true. My spouse, my wife, literally just mentioned that quote.
Love it.
Yesterday, within the context of another conversation that we were having. So it's such a powerful quote, and it's something that I think minoritized people need to remind ourselves of, that we should never seek validation from people who are responsible for our oppression. I mean, that will never end well for us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love that quote.
Yes,
Yeah.
me too. That's my mantra now.
So on the flip side, what do you think are some of the challenges you faced in your role, and how have they shaped or influenced your perspective in your leadership for Division 45?
Yeah, I think that probably the best example of a challenge that I faced was learning about how important it is to be careful with public messages that are made, when you are in leadership, that do not fully acknowledge the experiences of all, minoritized people. And I'm sure you all will remember, when I sent a message on the listserv that did not fully acknowledge experiences. I think it was indigenous folks, and so someone had to, kind of check me on that, and to say, hey, what about us? And it was a teachable moment. And so what I tried to do was take that moment, publicly acknowledge that I wasn't that I messed up, even though it wasn't intentional. I didn't know, but even the best of intentions can still result in people feeling hurt or harmed or discounted. And so it was a teachable moment that I hope Division 45 members, were able to kind of see that I humbled myself, and then sent out a revised message that was more inclusive of all of our, sort of minoritized communities and their experiences. And so that's a challenge. I mean, you can have the best of intentions, and you can still sometimes mess up, and you have to be humble enough to say, you know what, my bad, and seek to make amends.
I actually, when that happened and I saw your follow-up email, that really exponentially increased my respect for you. as a leader, as a mentor. And I'm like, that's who I want to emulate. That
Wow.
right there.
Okay. Thank you.
No, thank you. Like for paving the way for us and, for providing us this platform and, helping us grow in our own leadership as well.
Yeah, leadership is not easy, and
No.
you're going to make mistakes along the way. That's just part of being human. But it's not the it's how what is that saying? It's how you recover. You're going to make mistakes, but the important thing is sort of how you recover from those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
What are some of the takeaways that you have gained, especially from the context of our task force and through the cross-racial ethnic solidarity work?
Well, it kind of goes along with what we've already been talking about, that this is not easy work. Um, it's hard enough, and Dr. Don, I'm sure you can attest to this. It's hard enough being a leader within one's own community,
Mm-hmm.
and our communities are not homogenous by any
Right.
means, and so there are challenges within our own communities. And then when you're trying to be a leader of a multi-ethnic, multiracial sort of group, where you're dealing with, as I said, sort of complicated histories, dealing with, like, in some instances, like mistrust, and um, it has been. I think for me, the key lesson is that you go into this knowing that it's going to be difficult, and knowing, as I said, previously, that even the best of intentions can sometimes fall short, but that doesn't mean that you don't keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
And in this sort of, when Pooja sort of mentioned earlier, sort of the challenges of dealing with quote oppression Olympics, and that's something that I've thought about a lot, and I really have to credit my spouse, Dr. Jermaine Awad, with her being an Egyptian American, me being African American, I think we've learned a lot from each other. I've certainly learned a lot from her. It's broadened my perspective about understanding of race, of understanding of racism, of understanding oppression in ways that I don't think I would have ever known. It's helped me to be more empathic to the experiences of folks who aren't Black. It's helped me to de-center, to the extent that I can, um, myself and my understanding of racism and oppression, to be more expansive in how it differentially impacts other groups. And for that, I am very, very grateful. And I feel like I'm always in the space of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care how senior someone is, how published someone is, you're never in a place where you can't continue to learn and grow. And I always try to keep that sort of posture about me.
Yeah. Has that whole learning and continuing to grow, has that seeped into your own leadership style? Has it evolved since when you first started, as an emerging leader in our field, and where you are at now?
Yeah, no, I think so. Because again, like I've had the benefit of being around really, you know, strong and phenomenal leaders, and learning from them, and from different, racially and ethnically minoritized groups.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that has been incredibly influential in my own sort of leadership style and approach. I would say, with the Division 45 presidents, that I have had an opportunity to observe and learn from. There's been something that I could take from, I think, most of them in terms of their approach, their style, and I think that that's really important.
What would you say your leadership style is?
Oh, good question. What? Maybe I should ask. Well, my leadership style, I think my leadership style is very collaborative. I think that it's non-hierarchical to the extent that a leader can be non-hierarchical. I yeah yeah I think I'm very collaborative, very non-hierarchical, very empathic, very genuine, very humble. I continue to use these words because I see myself. I hope that I am that way because you can. There are leaders that take very different approaches. Leaders who are very sort of authoritarian. This is my way. We're going to do things this way. Who are pretty egotistical. Who aren't open to feedback. And I try not to be all of those things. I don't want to be that way. And I hope that people don't see me that way, because I would, if they do see me that way, I would feel like I have failed along the way. So
you are 1000% all of those things and more. And I wish there are like more leaders out there like you, or who can cultivate kind of some of these things that you've spoken about.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So as you officially conclude your tenure as past president, what messages would you like to convey to the members of Division 45?
Yeah, well, we touched upon this earlier. I would say, just because I am no longer a part of the presidential trio, and my past presidency is concluding, that the work of my presidential initiative of promoting cross-racial and cross-ethnic solidarity is not over. It should never be over. As long as Division 45 exists, we should always be seeking to figure out ways to enhance and to improve cross-racial and cross-ethnic solidarity. It has always been important, and it is even more important now, given what we, in the midst of sort of what's happening, across the world. And so I want members of Division 45 to take that to heart, and to always, and in fact, if you think about Division 45 and just sort of like who we are and what we are about, in many ways, the creation and the history of Division 45 was very much in line with sort of like trying to promote this. Well, let me clarify that, because I don't know if you all remember, but near the beginning of our task force, when we were conceptualizing the paper, part of what I did was I actually interviewed some of the early presidents of the Division 45, because I wanted to sort of get a better understanding of what was the motivation and rationale as they understood it for the creation of Division 45. And it was interesting because I got somewhat different responses from individuals. Much of the responses focused on representation, so that Division 45 wanted to work to make sure that there was more sort of representation of our issues. And interestingly, if I'm remembering correctly, there wasn't necessarily an explicit sort of focus of cross-racial and ethnic solidarity. Like that wasn't something that was necessarily talked about explicitly. I think maybe it was sort of like assumed, but it wasn't explicit. Again, the focus was really more on like representation and making sure that the APA was more responsive to the needs of minoritized communities. And so I think so. So I guess I hope I'm not contradicting myself. I hope that my that my presidential initiative reminds folks in Division 45 that we cannot take cross-racial and ethnic solidarity for granted. That just because we are together within Division 45 does not mean that we are naturally always going to be sort of supportive of each other in ways that are really important for fighting white supremacy and racism. That this is work that we have to continuously work with each other to if we're going to be successful in fighting white supremacy and racism. It's not enough to just simply be together in Division 45, but we actually have to actively work, and that's something that I hope Division 45 members remember.
Yeah.
Right.
Something that, I appreciate about, the presidential trio, like, because I'm like a new member to Division 45, so I don't know how it's been in the past, but I also appreciate how each of you even highlight the work in your talks when you address the community with past work that's also been done. Right? I've heard you frequently talk about like the radical healing or Dr. Art Bloom's work of the warrior path. And like Dr. Helen's mentioned that a few times. And, Dr. Helen's mentioned our initiative. So I really hope that is something that also continues to happen, right? Like kind of like what you said, where we're always remembering what past presidents have also done and continuing the work also in that manner, right?
And also with cross-racial ethnic solidarity, there has to be intention there, right? To work together. Because you said it is work. It's hard work. And you have to be intentional in being in that space. What is your motivation? What is your purpose, to like have that awareness?
Yeah. And, because we like thinking about like actionable items, I just kind of want to say, like, just to kind of summarize, especially for the work that we've done, is that continuing members to do that would really be like in leadership, right? Thinking about the cross-racial ethnic solidarity through your leadership, through teaching, through research, right? Through community projects, to bringing this at conferences. So that's some of the ways that members can continuing to do that. And yeah.
No, thank you. That is exactly what I said in
the first episode.
Yo, you remember that? Yes. Oh, okay. You
Dr.
read?
Cokley, I remember everything you say to me.
I see that. Okay. I appreciate that.
Pooja's a great student.
She is.
No, I also remember what, like anyone like whom I respect or who I kind of look up to so much and kind of want to take in, like wisdom you've imparted to me, right? I will always remember certain things that like are ingrained in my mind. But no, I obviously, because of our podcast too, and like, like wrapping it up, those are definitely some actionable items that can be thought of. And I guess, as we're kind of wrapping up, what do you see the podcast, or the role of the podcast in Division 45 playing in the ongoing work?
Well, I hope that more and more people will actually listen to the contents, listen to all the fabulous people that have been highlighted, listen to the pearls of wisdom that they have shared, and that people will take everything that was said and communicated during the podcast to heart and to act on them. I mean, I think that's the key, right? Like, we don't want people listening just for the sake of listening and not actually doing anything with what they've heard. And I hope that the podcast really spurs people to action.
Yeah. What would you say has been like one of your favorite moments of the podcast journey?
Oh, I like that question.
So I don't, I would say that maybe one of the most intellectually enriching or helpful podcast was really Dr. Bloom, because I think that
We've talked about that, how we love that episode.
because just because his ideas, of course, we see in our paper, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just, he's understated. So people might not appreciate the depth of his intellect. And so I think I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah. I think for me, it's been definitely like, in like the housekeeping conversation, I told you about the running episodes and what's leading and all of that. So that's definitely been like a episode that has like a lot of plays on our podcast. And I think what has really like stood out for me is Dr. Donna and I like using the podcast in teaching, right? So Dr. Donna using it in her multicultural awareness class. And like I asked permission for the intercultural awareness development class at my school if can this be added to the syllabus, right? Because in these classes, I don't really hear them talk about cross-racial ethnic solidarity. Mm-hmm. And for me, just being a TA, I think that was huge to being able to like bring that to my school. And I'm hoping that this podcast is going to continue to live, and I'm hoping that more educators out there can bring this podcast into teaching materials, because that's also a form of like advocacy and learning.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think for Dr. Donna and I, like something we've really spoken about is, like season 1 really focused on, psychologists, and we wanted to give, we wish we could have like had a lot more people, but we wanted to give voice just not to like our elders in the field, but also like early career, like mid-career and things like that. And for season 2, really highlighting people from like non-psychology backgrounds who are also engaging in cross-racial ethnic solidarity work. Because at the end of the day, cross-racial ethnic solidarity is about all of us from different professions also coming together and understanding what really needs to be done in our fields.
And how we can support each other.
Yes.
Right?
So we have one last question. I only came up with this after some episodes of season 1, so I could not ask you this, but it's my favorite question of the podcast. So I'm excited to be able to ask you this today as we're closing. What advice do you have for the younger generation?
That doesn't include me.
If you could meet your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, what advice would I give? Well, I would actually probably tie it into something that Dr. Donna said earlier, as relates to the research that I've been doing for, the past 13 to 14 years, related to the imposter phenomenon. And I think I would tell myself, and I would tell younger people, to not doubt themselves in terms of their capabilities, in terms of their accomplishments, in terms of who they are and who they will become. Because one never knows where one will end up going and what contributions one will make. And I certainly, as a young assistant professor, would have never imagined that I would have obtained the level of professional sort of visibility, and if you want to call it success, that I've had. And so I think I would just tell myself and tell young folks and students that you should not doubt the impact that you will have in the field, and to just trust and believe in yourself, and that it will happen.
Yeah. And I think, thank you so much for sharing that. And I remember from the first episode, like you also like seeing that you also had good mentors who, even though like you did not see that path, kind of were like, hey, you should get involved, or come be on this committee, come be on this committee and things like that. And I kind of, if I may, I just want to add to that, just from my own experiences. Don't be afraid to like reach out to people that you look up to and that you admire, and you admire their work and you're inspired by them, because what's the worst they could say? No, right? I wouldn't be here if you and I had not spoken, and if I had not asked you what I had asked you. So I just want to add to what you also said. So.
That is so true. Thank you for adding that.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cokley, for like all your service and, for everything that you have done and like continue to do. And thank you.
Yeah, and your continued mentorship. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I have really enjoyed working with both of you, and it's been a pleasure. And I have learned as much from you all as I hope you've been able to learn from me. So thank you both.
Yeah, from you, and also from, all of we frequently bring in the members of our task force too, from all the members of our task force too. So thank you for bringing us all together, and for, being so conscious about the team that you did select, because you're absolutely right. These are relationships that we're always going to have in our lives.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can make a. I don't know if I sort of a crooked looking heart, but you get the picture.
Right back at you.
Thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. For more information about today's guests and their social media links, you can click on the description links of the episode. Pooja Mami Dana and Dr. Donna Demanarig host this podcast. Our podcast team includes our podcast interns, Alexis Rios from the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas, and Petra Zadroga from Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts. We also want to acknowledge our production team, David DeVito and Rachel Sheffer.
If you would like to know more about us or to watch video clips of this interview, then follow us on Instagram at APADiv45_Presidential Task Force, on TikTok and X at APADiv45_Cokley, or on YouTube and Facebook at Dr. Kevin Cokley's APA Division 45 Presidential Task Force.
Strength and solidarity. The strength and solidarity.